Welcome to the session 2 of Unit 4. In the first session, we looked at the concept of markets and we hope you were able to understand how it was explained. Okay, in this session 2, or let me go back to that previous session, we discussed the types of markets studying in what? Economics. I don't know if you still remember, we talked about the money markets, the goods markets. That's what we are trying to say. You can, if you have forgotten, you can go back and revise. This particular session, we shall describe or discuss graphical depiction of how we attain equilibrium in the market. How do we attain equilibrium in the market? By graphical representation. All right, so learn things like equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. But before we get there, and in order to convey an understanding of how market work, we shall first provide you with an overview of the concept of what? Equilibrium. By the end of the session, we believe that you should be able to explain the concept of equilibrium, then show graphically market equilibrium, explain why a particular point represents the market equilibrium, and explain the concepts of excess demand and excess supply. That is the objective for this session. So let's start with the concept of what? Equilibrium. Now, the concept of equilibrium is employed in both physical and social sciences and is of central importance in economic analysis. In general, a system is in equilibrium when all forces at work within the system are cancelled by others, resulting in a stable, balanced, or unchanging situation. Now, in physics, for example, a ball hanging from a spring is said to be in equilibrium. We are talking about a pendulum. A ball hanging from a spring is said to be in equilibrium when the spring has stretched sufficiently that the upward force it exerts on the ball is exactly counterbalanced by the downward force of gravity. In economics, in particular, a market is said to be in equilibrium when no participant in the market has any reason to change his or her behavior so that there is no tendency for production of prices in that market to change. That is what we mean by equilibrium in economics. All right. Let's talk about the market equilibrium by graphical representation. We'll talk about market price determination. Now, basic tools for finding the market equilibrium. We use the supply and the demand curves for that particular good. In other words, in a free or competitive market, price is determined by the interaction of demand and supply. And market prices establish the relative values of various goods and services to the community. In the next slide, I'm going to sketch a diagram to explain something. Now, let me sketch this diagram. I know here is always price and here is always what? Quantity. All right. Now we know that the quantity demand curve is what? Downward sloping. And that of the supply is what? Upward sloping, or let's say positive slope. So I'll put something here, some working lines. I'll name this P0. I'll bring some P1 here. I'll link it to this part. I'll bring some P2 here. I'll link that to this part. I'll name this place E. Now I know this is my supply curve, this is my what? Demand curve. Alright. Now since this is PO, I'll link this the quantity to be Q. Oh, here is my origin. Okay. This part talks about shortage. There is shortage. In this part above here, we talk about surplus. I will explain this diagram, so don't worry. So in this diagram, we see the demand and supply curves that have been superimposed on each other. The two curves intersect at point E. This is the point of intersection. And that is the equilibrium point where quantity supply is exactly equal to quantity demand. At points of intersection, quantity supplied, so at this around this point, will be the same as the quantity demanded, and the price will be also the same. But at equilibrium price, that is the P0 or P naught, the quantity that sellers are willing to offer is exactly matched by the quantity that consumers take off the market. At this equilibrium point, we can see that both buyers and sellers are satisfied in the sense that buyers are buying exactly the quantity of the good they wish to buy at the prevailing market price. Sellers, on the other hand, are also selling exactly the quantity they wish to sell. And since they are satisfied in this sense, neither buyers nor sellers face any incentives to change their behavior. At any price above the equilibrium price, that is the P naught, the quantity that sellers will be willing to offer is more than the quantity that consumers are prepared to take off the market. So let's see here. See, when the price is at P2, the quantity that suppliers want would be say Q, but the quantity that the consumers want would be say Q1. You see, okay, so we can see that the sellers are willing to offer more and the consumers are prepared to offer less. Now we have instances that we observe or we describe the market condition as a state of disequilibrium. In situations like that, trade is either excess supply or surplus when quantity supplied is greater than quantity demanded. So anytime the supply is, so like the Q2 quantity supplied is greater than the quantity, here we can see that Q2 is above what? Q1, so we can say there is surplus. But when the demand is rather more, so let's look at this part. Here, let me say this is Q4 and here is say Q3. We see that here is on the supply curve. Q3 is less than Q4. The Q4 is on the demand curve. So anytime that the quantity demanded is more than the quantity supplied, there is shortage. Demand, those consumers want more of the thing, but the suppliers have supplied less of it. So you see, they will compete for the demand. Those who are demanding or the consumers will be competing for the good, the less good that is available. So they will actually be shortage. But when the supply is more than the ones that consumers are willing to consume, there will be surplus in the system. So there may be there is a lot more of Gary in the system, but people are consuming more, it's less. In that case, there will be more Gary left. However, when the suppliers are rather supplying less Gary and people are demanding for Gary, you see that there will be shortage in the system. That's what we are talking about. So the equilibrium price is the only price that will tend to prevail in the market. It is the point towards which the competitive market forces gravitate. It is a point where the market is clear. So when we ask you market clearing price, we are talking about the equilibrium price. So demand and supply generally determine the market price. And that is what we want you to have in mind. So summary of what we have looked at is equilibrium price is the price at which supply equals demand. And it occurs at the point of intersection between the demand and supply curves. Prices above the equilibrium denotes excess supply, and prices below the equilibrium denotes excess what? Demand. That brings us to the end of this particular session, and I will say thank you. The next session we will talk about market equilibrium using what algebraic expression, and that is what you should focus on because we are going to be giving you questions and equations for you to be finding or giving us the equilibrium market price and quantity. So see you in that session. Until then, I say again, thank you.